Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are, however you might be listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. We are the hockey podcast you're about to hear. My name is Alex. My name is Justin. Just kidding, alongside Alex.
Hello, I'm Alex. I'm not Justin.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll just keep going. So, and remember what they say, a party without cake is just a meeting. So,
Is this a meeting? There's no cake.
yeah, exactly. No cake, it's just a meeting. We're just all here.
I've been duped. The cake was a lie.
Exactly. The darn cake. So, for this episode, I figure we will start with the Western Conference, kind of go division by division, line out each team, see where we think they're going to finish out, kind of compare what they finished out last year, have any random thoughts, have a lock and a bold prediction per each division, so it should be a good time.
Sometimes a very bold prediction.
Yes, so I hope you don't fall out of your chair, or the couch in this case.
I have fallen out of couches before, so wouldn't be the first time.
All right, well, you want to take lead in the Pacific? Who you have as number one?
I would love to take lead in Pacific. So starting off in the Pacific, winning the division, I'm going to say that it's going to be the Las Vegas Golden Knights.
I also have the Knights finishing that division.
Now, how strong do you think that the Knights are going to be in that division?
I have them at 100 to 105.
I have them at about 115.
Okay.
I expect Vegas to have a phenomenal year.
Okay.
If you look at what they've done in the off season, not too noisy, good or bad. Last year, I think they got hosed. I think we'd be talking about them as Stanley Cup champions right now if it wasn't for a few. Yeah. So, no, I can see this team basically having two top lines that would rival just about any top line on any other team.
So I would agree, and their defense is looking pretty good.
I mean, so long as you have Marc-Andre Fleury healthy, I think this team just has really no major drawbacks that would concern me. I know some people don't necessarily like their defense, but honestly, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. And they're also playing in what I would consider the weakest division in the league, as far as you look at who they get to play against most. And just historically, this has not been a strong division over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I would agree. There's quite a few basement dwellers, so to speak.
Absolutely.
They're also my lock to finish first. Well, not to finish first, but at least make the playoffs from the Pacific.
I had them as a lock to win the division.
Okay. I'll match it. Lock to win the division.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right. So we are high on Vegas.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
So should we just stop here now because we agreed on the first one?
Yeah, I mean, we probably just should do their Stanley Cup champions, and let's just call it here, end the podcast, and go home.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Just kidding. Yeah, can't get away from us that easily.
Okay, so second in the Pacific Division, I was going to say it's going to be Calgary.
Okay. I also have the Flames as second.
Really?
Yeah, they're...
Yeah, Homer?
Yeah, well, a little bit. Actually, I have the Flames and Sharks kind of as a little arrow drawn back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have the Flames finishing at 90 to 95, and the Sharks finishing about 90 to 95.
Okay, fair enough.
So, yeah, I don't think, being the homer that I am, I'm also a realist somewhat.
He's a Flames fan, folks.
Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to finish anywhere near what they did last year.
Okay.
I mean, points-wise, or goals-wise, I think maybe they can do something, but I don't think the defense will be quite as good, and I don't think the goaltending will be quite as good. Because
I would agree with you on goaltending.
Yep. As much flack as Mike Smith got, I think he had a hard time adjusting to the new pads. So once he kind of got that figured out the back half of the season, especially in the playoffs, he was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
David Riddick, I listen to podcasts too much. They say Riddick, not Riddick.
Mm-hmm.
David Riddick, I think, can be the guy. I don't think he will necessarily win us a ton of games, but I don't think he'll lose us a ton of games either.
Oh, you don't think he's going to go behind the net and just throw the puck to the opposing forwards?
Yeah,
just for shoots and giggles?
Yeah, I sure hope not.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be okay not having 15 to 20 mini heart attacks every Flames game. Mike Smith, what are you doing? No, get back! No!
He was entertaining, I will give him that.
Yes, he was. Very dramatic. A lot of flair.
Yeah, a lot of unnecessary drama.
Also true. But no, once you got it, and then another thing with the Calgary D last year, they seemed to give up at least one kind of breakaway on a consistent basis every night.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you leave your goalies out to dry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 50-50 chance. I mean, I know those aren't the exact odds, but
Right.
even if you take a 50-50 on that,
Mm-hmm.
that's still not very good. So if they can cut down on the goals again, or the breakaways, and Reddick can step in and not lose us the game,
Mm-hmm.
I think we can do okay. But, yeah, remains to be seen.
So now that Kachuk has signed,
Mm-hmm.
how much did that weigh into the factor of, do you think you were going to lose him for a while? Did you think he was going to
Oh,
hold
I
out? Or
figured
now
he'd
that he's
be-
in, you...
Yeah, I figured he'd be there season opener.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think that was going to be an issue, so.
Okay. Very good. When it comes to Calgary, I take a look at their last year, all right, and they were top of the division. They had 107 points.
Mm-hmm.
They were a plus 62 plus minus,
Which is huge.
which is huge. That was second, I believe, just behind Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And by just behind Tampa Bay, I mean still like 40 goals shy of Tampa Bay.
Yeah,
But still,
everybody was just behind Tampa Bay.
they were comfortably in second place as far as goal differential goes.
Right.
I mean, so I asked myself, are they going to be better in that than last year? Probably not.
No.
Just because the goaltending is a little
Mm-hmm.
suspect, and Giordano had a phenomenal year. I
Yeah.
don't know if you're going to expect that another year older.
I don't quite expect that another year older. I expect him still to play at his level, but I think he was like elevated.
Right,
His level was elevated last year.
right. And so the question is if there's a drop off in the goals against, or a raise, I guess, basically in the goals against, how much do I think they'll drop off as far as goal scoring? And honestly, I feel like the whole James Neal experiment didn't work out. Not that the Milan Lucic experiment is going to go any better, but
Yeah.
I would hope to see another year of chemistry, another year of speed, another year of skill on display in Calgary across several lines, to
Yeah.
where I don't really see them scoring fewer goals substantially than they did last year.
Yeah, I
I don't think they've lost a whole lot.
No, I agree with you on that. I don't think, as far as the offense goes, I think they'll be able to do pretty similar to last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I think the defense and the goaltending will give up a little bit more than they did last year.
Yeah. Yep. You'll probably have some just higher scoring games.
Which is fine. I mean, we had a few of those, like 5-3, 6-4 kind of games last
Mhm,
year. So,
mhm.
you know,
Yep.
who
You
cares
just
if
might
we let in four if,
you just might be on either side of those numbers this year.
which was the case last year.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, with the whole James Neal thing, that kind of weirds me out. I mean, I guess from what I understand financially, quote, quote, it works out better for the Flames because Edmonton retained some of Lucic's contract.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, the man,
But they don't retain Lucic.
no. Yeah. Please. No. But Neal went to the Cup with the Preds.
Yep.
Went to the Cup with the Knights.
Yep.
Back-to-back years.
Yep.
That's got to wear on you quite a bit. And then, not to mention, he goes to his third team in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Another new system to learn. And, I mean, I think it just kind of caught up to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking this year he'd be comfortable again with another team. Same team as last year. Knows what's expected of him. He'd be good to go. But I guess we'll find out.
So my question then is, if Calgary had won that first playoff series against Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
would they have got rid of James Neal? Like
Who
if
knows?
they'd have had a better year than, hey, we made the playoffs, but boy, we were terrible in the playoffs. Let's make some changes.
Yeah.
Would it have been like, you know what? Give this whole group another year to grow and gel together? Or is it because they didn't do much that it's like, all right, we have to make some changes, and by golly, this James Neal guy's just not working out?
Well, that's a tough question because James Neal didn't do much in the playoffs either.
True.
So
He was very consistent all year.
he is nothing but consistent, which sometimes is good and sometimes is not so good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's a good question. They might have stayed on, but I think there's enough grumbling from the fans and whatnot to kind of, okay, this James Neal experiment didn't work out. Let's cut our losses and go. I think he only had a 2-year deal anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
No big deal.
yeah, I think that. I think what they're paying for Lucic is slightly less than what they're paying for Neal. So ooh, I guess whatever it takes to get Kachuk signed, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, he's gonna be a rich man in that third year.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think that third year is $9 million, which is his qualifying offer for whatever they start in the fourth year. So
Yeah.
he's gonna guarantee in 3 years be a $9 million player, which is like, well, if you could be a $9 million player right now, it's a good deal.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I think you'll have somebody very fun to watch for the next 3 years.
I think so. It'd be good.
That's good.
Yeah. So I'm excited for the Flames' future. A little nervous because the trend since you got me into hockey in the 2014-2015 season is every other year they made the playoffs, and then the following year they missed it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really hoping that trend doesn't continue. Which that's also why I have them going down to about 90 to 95 points instead of their normal, or what they did last year, I guess. So, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm. Well, the bubble is so close in the NHL of 90 points might not get you in, and 105 points wins you the division.
Yeah.
And so you have this 15-point swing that's just like, whoa, okay, well, that's only the difference of like 7.5 wins. So
Not a lot.
it's a really, really tight
What was
margin.
it? If Colorado had won half their overtime games last year, they
Mhm.
probably would have been right in the mix with Nashville and the Blues for
Probably.
points.
Probably. Yep.
So, all right. Well, that's number 2. Who do you have as number 3?
Number 3, I'm going to bring in, and I flip-flop on this one, I will say right now San Jose.
That's who I also have as number 3.
Okay.
And like I said, I kind of have them.
We did not look at each other's notes beforehand.
We sure didn't.
We did not compare anything.
We sure didn't.
So we either are right together or we are wrong together.
That's right. At least for now, until we get to some more bold predictions, I'm sure.
This is probably true. Yep.
Yeah, I have the Sharks. I wouldn't be surprised if they came in second. I'm ahead of the Flames,
Mhm.
but I think they'll be the second or third seed out of the Pacific.
Okay.
So.
All right. Yeah, and San Jose is an interesting one for me because I'm trying to say, how much better did they get in the offseason? And I don't really know that they did. I don't think you lose Joe Pavelski and say, hey, we
No.
got better.
And they lost a
Right.
couple of like low key guys too.
Yeah, they lost a couple of the pinions that, make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And the health of Erik Karlsson is always a concern.
Has he had a full season in his career?
Maybe his rookie year or something. I didn't follow him very closely in Ottawa until Ottawa was really good, and I was like, hey, I like this guy. And then
The
he went to
one
the
year?
Sharks. I'm like, I don't really care for him anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, the one year they were pretty good.
But he always tries really hard.
He does.
Yeah, well, sometimes painfully so. So my problem with Karlsson is, one, the amount of money they gave somebody that they don't
Ridiculous.
expect to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be paying a lot of money to somebody that's going to miss time most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if he has a good year, like, he needs to be at Norris Trophy caliber to justify the expense.
So is that your lock for Carlson's going to injure himself at some point this year?
No, because I don't see their defense struggling all that much, because Karlsson will probably just be taking second line time, which I think he should be fine.
That's true.
I expect Burns to put up the minutes, and
His top line was about 20, 25 minutes a game, roughly, for defense.
yeah, somewhere in there. I know Burns likes to play all the time.
Put me in, coach!
And part of the hard thing about a season preview is our last thing we saw was the playoffs, where defensemen were playing like 28 minutes. You're like, oh, they're out there all the time. Or some guys are throwing down 30 minutes in a game. It's like, this is ridiculous. And trying to remember, okay, how often do these guys actually play during the regular season?
Yeah, that's true.
So I could see, though, where that 1-2 tandem of Burns and Karlsson on the ice for 85% of the Sharks' time,
Mm-hmm.
you should have at least a defense that's going to score. I'm not totally sold on either one of those guys' great ability to defend well, because they are offensive minded and they're known for putting up points. Karlsson for skating fast and being great on the power play. That's fine, but these are still defensemen we're talking about, and I guess if they're not scoring, their team is going to struggle, because that means they're playing defense, and I think if they spend most of their time playing defense, San Jose would struggle. So that's kind of where I'm at this toss on San Jose, because I could justify them being like, if Burns and Karlsson are just lighting it up from the back end, and they're getting all the secondary scoring they need from everybody else, and Couturier, the captain now, is just, takes his games still to another level, which most people don't really know a lot about him, just because he is that West Coast, not
Late
flashy.
night.
Yeah, he doesn't get the East Coast media. They could be a really good team. I just don't think they're going to be a really good team.
Right.
And
Depends on the leaky faucet behind him too, how he does.
exactly. As far as if you're leaking between the pipes, then it's gonna be hard. And I know he came on pretty decently in the playoffs and seemed to make a difference in a lot of games. But like we said, playoffs are totally different than regular season. To where I don't expect him to be able to be a top 10 goalie for 82 games.
Yeah, I agree. And their backup is some random, I think it's Dell or something like that, isn't it? And
Yeah,
he's
Dell.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he wasn't good enough to get past Jones. So if you're not good enough to get past Jones, then you're at the best okay.
Yeah. So I had Jones on my fantasy hockey team last year for the first month. He would allow like 4 or 5 goals and still get the win. So it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Grr.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think you're going to. I don't see San Jose's goals for increasing this year with the loss of Pavelski.
I agree. And the other.
And the other second and third line losses they've had.
Yep.
So their goals given up, probably about the same. So I can't put them quite as high as they were
Yeah,
last
that's
year.
kind of where I'm coming from too. I mean, they might get 100. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but I figure lump in the 90, 95 range and.
But if they're still a healthy team come playoffs, they're a great team.
Right.
Potentially.
Yeah,
So
but they gotta get there first.
yeah. Yeah. And assuming, Joe Thornton stays healthy on that third line all year.
Like, yeah.
All right.
Man.
Fourth in the division.
Okay.
And this is where the straight toss-up is, because they have both San Jose somewhere around 95 points, give or take, somewhere in the mid-90s. Another team I'm going to put in the mid-90s is Vancouver.
All right, another one we agree on.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. So this is my quote-unquote bold prediction, I think, because I have them at 90 to 95.
Mm-hmm.
So right there with the Flames and the Sharks. I couldn't quite put them ahead of the Flames and the Sharks,
Mm-hmm.
but it wouldn't surprise me if they grab that number 3. I think they're definitely getting in as a wild card,
Okay.
but it wouldn't surprise me if they get that number 3 spot and bump one of those other 2 down to a wild card.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm buying what they're selling.
I honestly can't really disagree too much with that, because I also have Vancouver getting in probably as like the 8 seed.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I like the way that Pettersson's playing. I like the way they've built that team. And then they made a ton of acquisitions in the offseason. Defensemen, forwards, they've got some things in place where if it starts to gel and click, which given how well they played last year without those pieces, if you can just kind of add some extra things to that, I can see where they can go from a team that's like, well, maybe they'll get one of the top 3 picks to, boy, our rebuild's just about over. Let's go for the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, well done by Vancouver
Mm-hmm.
to get to this point. And by well done, I mean you got lucky getting Pettersson turning into suddenly this out of nowhere star, because
he won the Calder Cup, right?
he won the Calder Trophy. He won that basically by the time Jordan Bennington got into the league.
Right. That's
Like
right.
he had it locked up by the end of December as far as like there's no other rookie really even close to this. And then obviously people thought that by the end it's close with Bennington. It's like
Is it though?
not really. You kind of got to play
Is
the
it
whole year.
though? Yeah.
And this obviously everything is predicated, I think, on Pettersson staying healthy for the majority of the
course.
season.
Mm-hmm.
If he plays 70 games, I think they're in.
Okay.
If he plays 60 games, I think they fall out.
Okay.
Like it's very, very close. And I know there is sometimes that sophomore slump, but he didn't have the kind of year where it was like, boy, he just got lucky. Boy, he just got lucky. You could see the skill and the attention that he has when playing hockey that you didn't see from other rookies. Sometimes rookies come in and they just don't know any better, and so they just do stuff that's like, oh, well, that worked. Oh, that worked. And next year, teams adjust, and it's like, all right, well, you're not going to get away with that this year, kid. The different ways that he scores goals, different situations he scores goals, his awareness on the ice at all times shows a hockey IQ far above a rookie, to where I don't think he will have that intellectual slump like a lot of rookies do.
Yeah, I've heard it explained pretty well. The first year is just basically pure adrenaline, kind of like what you said. You're just going to be right here. Oh, hey, cool, that worked. Cool, awesome, yeah. And then the second year, they're overthinking it. And so that's kind of what causes the sophomore slump. And then the third year is really that key year. Whereas can they put that first year back together, get over, the mental games, and basically knuckle under and get back to where they were, or do they just keep slumping and
Mhm.
eventually become a
Mhm.
bust?
Right.
So yeah, that second year. Yeah, second year's pretty crucial. Third year's pretty crucial in development. But I agree with you. I think he'll continue to perform at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that they signed was Michael Furland. Makes me sad because 2 years ago he was Flame. He was a great player. He's
Mm-hmm.
a big body, has some skill with his shots, but he will go out there and disrupt. He's not afraid to lay a hit.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think when he was on the Flames, he fought the Canucks at least once a year, or maybe twice a year. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think he's a very good addition for them, and I think he'll
Mhm.
do well. He did pretty well. I think he didn't do too bad in Carolina
Mm-hmm.
either. But yeah, I think he'll do great.
I remember watching towards the end of last year's when they had Quinn Hughes up, Jack Hughes' older brother, and watching him skate the puck out of the defensive zone with confidence was really, really fun to watch. He looked like a young Erik Karlsson, to where it's just like, all right, he gets it back in the defensive zone, and typically it's all right, pass, get it out to center ice, dump it in, and he just skated all the way to the opposing blue line. He was just like, I have the puck, I have the speed, I know what I'm doing, I'm just gonna go for it.
All right. Yeah.
And so, with a young guy like that coming up on defense, and then some of the existing pieces, and then some of the guys like Myers that they got,
Mhm.
hopefully they can find a way to make all those pairings work. Because defensively, having balanced defense is important.
Yes.
Because it doesn't do you a whole lot of good to have one top line and then your next four are sieves. So
yeah.
hopefully they can find a good balance amongst their defensive core that utilizes all their stuff. I think it would be hilarious to watch Quinn Hughes out there with Myers, because Hughes is not very tall and Myers is a giant. And they'd be this excellent contrast of, you go do the big stuff and I'll go do the fast stuff.
Okay, yeah.
So it'll be fun to see Vancouver this year. I'm kind of
Mhm.
looking forward to watching some of their games. It's just kind of like opening night. I'm planning on watching their game just because, like, shoot, I want to see what
Hockey's
these guys actually
back.
have. Hockey is back. Hockey is back. A week from this podcast.
Yes.
So very, very exciting stuff.
Yes, I am excited. It's been, not that it's long off season, but it feels like it's been a long off season.
Yeah, I think just because the playoffs were so good and so engaging this year with all the drama and the overtimes and the 7-game series, it was
Mm.
awesome. And to come off of that high and just do nothing for 3 months was hard.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, most teams off seasons, most leagues off seasons are pretty boring.
Mhm.
NHL is right up in there with the most boring, because
Yeah.
there's usually there's a lot of speculation, but there's not a whole lot that happens.
Say this year's been kind of unique with all the restricted free agents, and still
Yes.
it's been kind of boring beyond that.
It has. And so just being desperate for hockey is like, oh, preseason started? I'll watch some preseason games. Like, I never watch preseason games, but this year I'm like, I was all over it.
Yeah, I usually don't care for preseason too much.
I was like, I don't watch some highlights. But these goals don't matter for anything. They don't even count towards anything.
Exactly.
But it's hockey. It's hockey.
It's not even the team they're going to put on the ice when it comes.
Yeah.
So,
And depending on who you're a fan of, you might be playing your best hockey in the preseason this
yeah.
yeah,
Hopefully
yeah,
not.
yeah.
But who knows?
year. So, all right, moving on. So that's our top 4 right now is Vegas, Calgary, San Jose, Vancouver, all of which we agree on. And are you saying all those guys are making the playoffs?
Correct.
Or okay, so our 3 division leaders, obviously, because they all get in,
Mhm.
and then you're saying Vancouver as a wild card.
Mhm.
My question for you is the next team a wild card team for you, or do they miss the playoffs?
So they missed the playoffs.
Okay. I believe for myself, I would also have this team missing the playoffs, just barely again.
Yeah.
My 5th team in the Pacific Division is the Arizona Coyotes.
5 for 5.
5 for 5.
Oh,
Look at
man.
us go.
It's like
Wow.
we're friends or something. We hang out a
Yeah,
lot. Something. I don't know.
We are either brilliant together or stupid together. This is concerning to me.
Yes. I'm sure it'll change.
Okay.
Probably.
So why would you put Arizona in that spot? What was your reasoning? Is it Phil Kessel's just going to come in there and make them a better team, or how do you justify?
They're the Coyotes. They'll find some way to shoot themselves in the foot.
Sure.
Like last year, I know their goalie went down for a while, but just when it kind of seemed to think that they could make the playoffs, that's when they went on this big, huge run when there was no pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And they came within 1 or 2 points, I think.
Yes, last year the Arizona Coyotes.
Or no, more than that, because they finished at 86.
Yeah, they finished at 86, and
The Avs had
Avs were the last one in at 90. So they were 4
were
points
close.
back.
A couple games back. So once they got back within quote unquote range, they kind of started tripping over themselves again. But they went on a brilliant run without their star goalie. But I just can't see him doing it until I actually see him doing it. Kind of thing.
Arizona is a team where I don't see much of their games because, one, they're obviously a later market game. They don't have a lot of flashy players. They don't. They're just one of those kind of like meh teams in the NHL.
Yeah.
That's like, I don't really know what you are, but you exist. And so I feel like there's times where Arizona probably just kind of gets forgotten about in the overall scheme of things. I think this year they make enough noise that people are really going to start to pay attention. I think they'll probably beat some teams that they have no business beating. I can see where they lose to some teams that they have no business losing to.
That's what I was about to say.
I think it's still a team that's figuring itself out, gaining their full identity, and still have probably a couple pieces they need to be considered a constant playoff contender. But I think they're on the right track heading towards that.
Correct.
Now, I know they're under new ownership, and so there's going to be questions of, well, is this team going to end up in Houston soon? Or there's talk of at some point that changing. I don't know if it's going to distract, or it's just going to be like, no, we're just going out there and play hockey. So,
and then with them moving to Central next year,
okay,
because that's when Seattle comes in, right? Correct? It's 2020 season.
2021.
2021. So yeah, they'll be
It's a long ways away.
Yeah, well, forever. So yeah, whenever Seattle comes in, they'll be moving to the Central as it is. So who knows what they'll do?
Once you're in the Central, you'll probably get decimated because the Central is brutal. Or is it brutal? We will get to that.
It was
shortly.
last year, that's for sure.
Absolutely. But it also held the Stanley Cup champion, so
also true.
You know, kind of through the fire.
That's right. But yeah, the Coyotes, like you said, I just cannot put them ahead of the Flames, the Sharks, or the Canucks.
I put both San Jose, Vancouver, and Arizona all around 95 points. So I can see where Arizona has a better year last year than Colorado. Like, they'll have more than 90 points, but they'll miss the playoffs.
Right. You think the threshold's going to be a little bit higher this year for getting in the West?
I think it is.
Okay.
I do. A little bit higher. I also think overall there will probably be more points scored this year because we see more and more games, it seems like, going to overtime to where there's more and more points out there to where it used to be 90, 92 points could probably get you in. 95 would sure get you in.
Yep.
And last year we had a team with 96 points miss the playoffs. So if you actually want to be in, you better be at least at 95. And so that's why anybody that's around 95, in my opinion, is still a playoff bubble team.
Yep, still a bubble.
Yep.
I would agree with that. So.
All right, so let's go to the 6th in our division.
Okay.
I have the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, I debated. I have the Ducks and the Oilers right at the same point total.
Okay.
So, it's just
what point total do you have them at? Because I have them separated a little bit.
I have them right around the 80 to 85 mark for both of them. So I think last year the Ducks had 80 and the Oilers had 79. So.
Yeah, I think Edmonton is better this year. I think the addition of Ken Holland brings a consistency and stability to the overall direction of the team that players can hopefully buy into more. And you still have McDavid, right? So just as long as you don't play terrible defense and goaltending, you got a shot to win every game because he could potentially take over the whole game if he wanted to. I know he's the kind of player that, like, when you have the best player in the league, arguably, missing the playoffs consistently, I feel like at some point somebody's got to step in and be like, all right, let's make a trade with Edmonton so that McDavid can get to the playoffs so we have something to talk about other than Crosby and Ovechkin every single year.
So can we trade him to the East, though?
I don't really want him in the East. I'm really happy where he's at. But McDavid's probably not going anywhere, and so I can see where this year could be the year where they get frustrated because they almost make the playoffs because they've improved and they've made those little steps, but I don't see them being a playoff team. Could they? Could they get hot? Absolutely.
Catch fire. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
You could have some things click, and suddenly it's like, whoa, where'd this come from? Hey, who's this new guy? And Holland might make some trades to try and make some things happen.
Sure. Well, they're kind of stuck with a really bad contract for their goalie.
Well, it is. Here's part of my speculation is that Jimmy Howard in Detroit is in the last year of his contract in Detroit.
Okay.
Ken Holland, who Jimmy Howard has played for his whole entire career, is now the GM in Edmonton. I expect Detroit, if they're nowhere near a playoff team, which they shouldn't be, to look to at least try and get something for Jimmy Howard, even if it's a 6th-round draft pick towards the trade deadline. If Edmonton is anywhere around playoff contention at that point, I can see where Ken Holland says, hey, I'll take him for the rest of the year.
Right.
And Howard's not a Stanley Cup winning type of goaltender right now. And that's fine. I think he's better than anything that Edmonton can throw out there. Especially given a opportunity to, hey, I haven't been off a playoff team in 5 years now. I could go play for Edmonton and potentially make the playoffs? Sweet. That sounds like a great deal. So we'll see how the year plays out, but that's one of the kind of things I'm looking down the road, like, how can Edmonton get better during the season if they're playing well enough with the pieces that they have? And I can see Ken Holland making some moves for the short term if they want that. More than likely, though, he's probably looking for their goaltender of the future somewhere in the draft or somewhere in signing a prospect or something they already have in the development pool.
Right.
But if you have a chance to go for something this year, you'd go for something this year.
Right. So I'd be okay if Jimmy Howard came to the Flames. So I mean, you know.
I honestly I don't necessarily think that Jimmy Howard will be with the Red Wings the entire year.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. I don't see them signing him to a longer term deal because Detroit's in a rebuild, and so I think that's one of the goaltenders that's going to be out there. That's like, well, you need goaltending.
Everybody needs goaltending.
And so, by golly, and if he's playing well, which he had stretches last year where he played well, I think there'll be a number of teams knocking on their door saying,
I agree.
hey, can we get this guy? So that's one thing I look for. So if you said you had Anaheim in that spot, tell me about Anaheim.
They're kind of in the middle of rebuild. I don't remember anything really catching my eye for what they did this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think they really improved themselves all that much.
They finally brought in Akins as their head coach out of their minor league team, which took them forever to do.
That's right. I remember that.
Which was kind of annoying because everybody knew, well, this is the reason you're not going after Quenneville. This is the reason you're not going after so-and-so. This is the reason you're not going after so-and-so. And all these other, you signed like 7 other coaches off season. And it's like, well, I guess Anaheim's the only one left open. What are they going to do?
Oh, weird.
Oh, they're going to do exactly what everybody thought they would do months ago. It just took them forever to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just stuff like that. It's like, I don't think they're going to, I think they're pretty old.
Yeah, I mean, they bought out Corey Perry, right?
Right.
And Getzlaff is older.
Much older.
He's still capable.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Joe Thornton type guy.
Mm-hmm.
But
you can't rely on them for big minutes.
They're going to have some of those issues. I know they have a couple of their players that are basically on like long-term injury reserve, and like Patrick Eaves and stuff, and Ryan Kessler. Like, those are guys, they're not coming back, but those were guys that they relied on in their top 2 lines that can't play hockey anymore. And so that cripples a team if you lose them one way or the other, to lose that type of talent, which both those guys had some pretty decent seasons. I think as they're doing this rebuild, when you bring in the coach that's been in your minor league affiliate to be the head coach, much like Tampa Bay has done with John Cooper, because Cooper spent his time in the Tampa Bay Development League, worked his way up, and now is the head coach of Tampa Bay. So the guys that have come up through that entire farm system are familiar with that coach. I think Anaheim is building that right now, and they're just going to kind of be in the first year of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have some really good games. I wouldn't also be surprised if they have some really bad games.
Which I think they'll have more bad games than they do have good games.
I would absolutely agree with that.
So
now, one thing that's probably lost, I think, in all of Anaheim is they have a really good goaltender on a really bad team.
Yeah, that's gonna be so rough.
Which is tough for Gibson, but if he sticks around to see more of this rebuild through, give him 2 or 3 years, Anaheim could again be a team that's like, oh crap, Anaheim.
Yeah,
I don't like Anaheim,
Yeah.
but they're playing well again. So we'll see. I think as you see probably like San Jose start to fall out of favor, somebody's going to come up and kind of take another spot out of the California teams, and really Anaheim is the one.
I agree. Okay. And then
So
last but kind of least, Kings.
last is the Kings.
Yep.
Dead, stinking last is the Kings. And this is my bold prediction for the division is that the Kings will have less than 60 points this year.
Woo! That's quite the prediction.
As contrast, last year Ottawa was the worst team and they had 65 points.
So yeah, the Kings had 71.
64 points. 64 points? Yeah, 64 points.
Yep, 64. Kings had 71 last year. So you think they're going to be 5.5 games worse?
I absolutely think they'll be 5.5 games worse.
They're-
I think, unless they bench quick and play Campbell, but money-wise, they can't do that. They can't do that. I think this is the second year of a really painful rebuild because
there's still a couple years left on Quick's contract, isn't there?
there is, and they got guys like Carter and they got guys like Brown, and they are not to the caliber of their contracts anymore. This is a team that wanted to win cups several years ago. They won a couple cups over the last 10 years, I believe, which is, hey, that's a great high. But at some point, all the guys that you had to pay after winning all those cups eventually get older, and you're stuck with their contracts, and the league has gotten faster and younger, and they haven't been able to. So I think they are several years behind the curve, and it's going to take a new goaltender. It's going to take a new top line. And those are going to be things that they are building at this point, and I think they're in for a long drought of we are going to be in the pits for a while.
So I would agree with that. So,
And as even as this league is, the Kings are going to suck
yes, I agree.
for
Which
a while.
Is I'm not shedding any tears with that. So that's fine with me. All right, so we mostly agreed on the Pacific. I mean, 6 and 7 flip flop pretty much, but I think that's
very
fine.
much on the Pacific.
I'd say that counts.
One of the reasons I say the Pacific is the worst division in hockey is if you average out the last 5 years, the average point total per team in a division. So you take the total number of points that team scored, or the total number of points that each team scored at the end of the year, add those up and divide it by the number of teams. They average, over the last 5 years, 87.5 points per team as a division.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me a bit.
That is by far the lowest. That's 2 points lower than the next lowest, and almost like 8 or 9 points lower than the rest of the divisions. So they are by far, as a conference or as a division, the worst.
Yeah.
And so even if you're the best team in the worst division, doesn't mean you're a great team. And I think we saw that with Calgary losing the first round, and just nothing really. Like they sent 3 playoff teams last year, right? They sent Vegas, they sent Calgary, and they sent San Jose. That was it, because somebody had to win that division.
Right.
Somebody had to be second in the division, somebody had to be third in the division. And everything else beyond that was really just crap.
Right.
And so it's probably going to be another year of that division being beat by the other 3 divisions when they play them.
I agree. So now on to the Central. I think we'll have a little bit of differences here, or do you think we'll be pretty close to the same?
The Central's going to be interesting. I think because the Central is so tight that I would almost anticipate that we were going to have some discrepancies.
Okay. So who's your number 1?
My number 1 in the Central will be the Colorado Avalanche.
Hey, we're off to a good start.
Okay. Now, this is where my bold prediction is. I think the Colorado Avalanche are the President's Trophy. I have them at around 120 points this year. Really? So
Yep.
what's your prediction for the Colorado
I
Avalanche,
also
buddy?
have them winning the President's Cup. I'm getting about 115, 120.
That's right where I'm at.
Yeah,
This-
getting the President's Cup.
This is weird. We could just do a solo podcast.
Right,
Each of us
might
and
as
it turn out
well.
the exact same.
Yeah.
Okay.
record and send it to each other.
This is all assuming they get Mikko Rantanen,
Correct. That's
signed,
what I was about to say.
which,
Mhm.
as of the recording of this podcast, that has not happened yet. Here we are 6-7 days away from puck drop. A week from tonight, we will actually be at the Calgary Flames and Colorado Avalanche home opener in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
And I would hope Rantanen would be there. We know Kachuk will be there.
Yes, we do.
I would hope Rantanen would be there. It would be two fully stocked teams going at it. No, I know that there's apparently they're fairly far apart, but it looks like that whole 3-year bridge deal seems to be what's getting the RFAs done at this point. And I can see Rantanen maybe being willing to sign one of those. And
Yeah, I think if he misses even a couple weeks or maybe a month, I think they'll still be okay.
they'll still be okay. I wouldn't necessarily put them at President's Trophy.
Correct.
If he's in the
But-
full season, I'm more confident.
Yes.
Far more confident.
Same here. I mean, even if he misses like a week or two, I'm still saying it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But as far as like what they've done all season, because they've had a very interesting off season. They also had obviously a fantastic playoffs, which
Uh-huh.
I mean, depending on what you want to go back and nitpick as far as what offsides is and what penalties are and aren't,
Yeah, that's
those kind of things.
Well, another.
I could see where Colorado would still be playing in the playoffs right now if you know all things were worked out that way. But as it is, they had a little bit shorter of a off season than they were expecting, because a lot of people didn't think that they were necessarily going to
Mm-hmm.
do much in the playoffs, and they played for a while.
Barely squeaked in.
Barely squeaked in, but played
Mhm.
really, really well. You know,
Yeah.
they never looked out of place in the playoffs, and
No, they didn't.
that's important for a team this young to get that experience
Yeah.
now.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's very, very important for those players to develop. Obviously, it's a little bit short of an off season they're used to, but I don't see where they had a ton of major injuries that were like, oh, what a short off season. Where I think some of the teams from Eastern Conference Finals, and certainly from the Stanley Cup,
Mm-hmm.
had shorter off seasons,
Mhm.
and some of those guys are pretty banged up. So I think they're in a good spot to take this year by storm.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think, like you said, you have enough young talent, enough veteran presence.
Mhm.
Goaltender situation is a little iffy, but I think that
Yep.
I think the defense in front of them should be fine to kind of mask some of that a little bit.
Young defense, and I can see where they may have some learning hiccups. They may have some games where they give up 5, 6, 7 goals. They're also going to have some games where they score 5, 6, 7 goals.
So I think that'll be
So I think they're going to be a fun shootout team to watch, which in the
Yeah.
regular season,
mhm.
shooting out is fine as far as, hey, we're just going to go back and forth and down the ice, and whoever scores the most goals wins.
Woo!
They can play that style. They have they certainly have the talent to play that style. And if they have a competent second line, which they have worked this season to get,
Mm-hmm.
even though they've had to give up some stuff to get that,
With
you have Kadri now
Thinking
centering
Kadri, that's what I was
your
thinking.
second line. They brought him some other pieces around him to where I don't know if they're planning on keeping the McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen line. They kind of went back and forth throughout the year last year of sometimes Rantanen would go down and play second line just to try and bring some scoring to a second line that didn't really have
Mhm.
much. And I understand wanting to have two good attack lines. If you can keep that top line the top line, like Tampa Bay did, where they just had a top line that was phenomenal but still have solid secondary scoring from the second line, that's what you really, really want.
Mhm.
And I think they're getting closer to that. It'll still be interesting to me to see how Kadri performs with a new team.
think he behaved himself.
Yeah, I think he kind of wore out his welcome there with some of his
big time.
his antics in the
Big time.
postseason, and I think Toronto needed a scapegoat for the way their season ended, and that ended up being Kadri.
Because I think next time it's going to be the coach.
I would agree with that. We will probably get to that when we get to the Eastern Conference. Maybe it's a bold prediction. Maybe it's a lock. Who knows?
Who knows? We're not there yet. So.
I'm interested to see how he plays this year. If he's motivated
Mhm.
to prove everybody wrong that no, I am a second line center still, even though you guys bumped me down to third line because hey, you have Tavares and you have Matthews, so I got to go play third line.
Right.
If he's going to be a good second line center again in the NHL and have the kind of season that they're hoping he's bringing, I'm on the high side of that.
Okay.
I think you take a player and you give him something to prove, he'll prove.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And I can see him doing that. Now, he'll probably get suspended if they make the playoffs.
Is that your lock? That'll be a lock when we do the playoffs one.
That'll be a playoff lock. Is Kadri suspended at least for one game?
Yeah.
For sure.
Right.
But no, and like we talked about, their defense is young. There's a lot of skill there. There's a lot of speed there. Obviously, we only saw Makar for like 9 games.
Right, but what
we
games?
saw, he looked like the real deal. We'll see if there's. It's not really a sophomore slump because he's a rookie, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of teams he hasn't played. There's a lot of goalies he hasn't played. There's a lot of forwards he hasn't played, right? But the forwards that he did play against, there were some pretty decent forwards in Calgary. Some pretty decent forwards in San Jose.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like he was up against chumps. And so I enjoyed watching him play and doing what he did, which is hard for me because I'm really not a huge Colorado fan.
I'll say, yeah, same here.
But if you're entertaining, boy, be entertaining, and I'll watch.
That's right. That's right. So I was number 1. So who is your number 2?
My number 2 is the St. Louis Blues.
Hey.
Oh,
so
you
far,
kidding
so
me?
Good, yeah.
Come on, you're killing me here.
Yeah. So they're my lock. I think they'll be one of the top 3 seeds in the Central.
Okay.
So I don't think they will be above Colorado, unless, of course, like you said, the re-signing doesn't happen
Right.
within a reasonable amount of time. But no, I think the Blues, with Bennington under for the year, I mean, kind of giving respect to the Stanley Cup champs at this point until they prove that they don't. I think they're going to.
What did you think of the trade they just made for Justin Falk and sending Edmondson to Carolina? Because I feel defensively that was an upgrade. I wasn't super impressed with Edmondson in the playoffs, where we got to see a lot of. I thought he made some really stupid mistakes at times. I think it was a point where he was benched in favor of Gunnarsson, who then came in and scored the overtime urinal goal.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And so I can see where St. Louis was happy to get rid of Edmondson, and they brought in Justin Falk, and they brought in Justin Falk long term. Like, Justin Falk is going to be there a long time. He's going to be a cornerstone in that defense that already has, I feel, 2 or 3 good cornerstones. I mean, you have Pietrangelo and you have Parenko already.
Oh, yeah.
They're solid on defense. If Bennington can just play well, this team has several years of really, really good hockey ahead of them to where, shoot, they could easily win the cup again.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm not going to be surprised I mean, you got to keep your 3rd and 4th line guys signed, and I know they're going to have some issues as some of those contracts come up because some of those guys have outperformed the deals they're on, and they're going to end up going to another team that's like, hey, we want the guy from your team that won the Stanley Cup. Because we want that experience in our room.
I think that's what happens a lot of time with championship teams, why they can't repeat is, oh, hey, we'll give you this money because you were on the championship team, come and play for us.
Right.
And then, okay, yeah, we'll go, but you're not a championship caliber team.
Yep.
So, yeah, it just kind of falls apart.
Yep. But once you have that ring, you get paid more.
That's right.
So your name's on a cup that isn't for a lot of guys.
Yeah, that's a really
so
good point.
My lock is also St. Louis, but my lock for St. Louis is this. They will not be last place in the NHL on the 3rd of January this year.
Yeah, I can see that lock.
That is my lock. I do not think that's going to happen.
I would agree with that. So
whether Bennington's healthy or not, I don't think they're.
Yeah, I think they finally clicked enough last year with all the pieces they brought in last year. I think they'll be able to string it together.
And they underperformed at the start of last year. Because this was a good team last year, where if you were predicting last year, you would have said St. Louis probably makes the playoffs. They were that kind of a team. And for them to underperform the way they did, it was more of a...
What in the world?
What?
Yeah.
What's going on?
What?
Yeah. And then, hey, change the goaltender. Hey, figure this stuff out. Hey, play Gloria. And off you go. Whoop-de-diddly-do. A few fortunate breaks here and there. And ta-da, you're Stanley Cup champions.
Ta-da.
So, good on them. Well deserved. Very, very fun to watch. And had a good year. I think they'll have another good year.
I agree. Okay. Who do you have as number 3?
Number 3, I'm really, really torn on. Really torn on because I think this is where you start to get into the mess that is the Central. I feel Colorado and St. Louis distinguish themselves above the rest of the pack, and I could probably justify almost any of the rest of the teams being in this spot.
Okay.
But for this spot, I'm going to put in the Dallas Stars.
Oh, all right. I have the Preds.
Okay. Fair enough. So I will justify Dallas as it's a team that I feel got older in the offseason because they signed Pavelski, they signed Perry, and they lost Zuccarello. So overall, I think it's a team that's just like, well, that's with as quick as the league is getting, I don't necessarily know that you added pieces that made your team faster. However, their young defense is really, really coming on.
Yeah.
They have some young guys that are just like, these are going to be some pretty good defensemen in the league for a while, as the league is almost kind of changing to a different style of defenseman that is far more of a
don't worry about defense.
or be a fourth offensive zone player as opposed to the second defenseman. You're really a fourth forward. Right. And you saw that a lot in the playoffs with teams where the teams that were having their defensemen jump into the offensive zone and keep the puck in and keep the cycle going seem to have far more success because you pinned the other team in, you got them tired. And obviously that's playoff hockey. That doesn't necessarily translate to regular season, but I think in regular season, those guys take even more chances at times to contribute to scoring. And so long as you have Ben Bishop still standing between your pipes,
yes, I agree,
that even if your young defensemen do jump in and they don't make the play, or they make the play and the other team turns around and skates faster back than they do, you still have somebody that's going to stop the majority of your mistakes, which is huge for young defensemen to be able to develop, of knowing that I have a safety net. Because those mistakes then are less detrimental to the team.
And I think that's what happened with the Blues once Bennington came in. Started covering those mistakes. The defense is like, oh, okay, well, I can be a little more aggressive because, it's not going to kill me to give up something on accident.
Yep, there's no sieve behind me, so I can be a little bit more aggressive and push the play a little bit and make some plays. And defensemen have the skill these days where I think previously there have been some very skilled defensemen, don't get me wrong, but as a position, it has become more and more of a skill position.
Correct.
As opposed to a body position, because you have some really small defensemen now that are some of the best defensemen in the league, whereas before you needed to be more the enforcer, you need to be more the stay-at-home defenseman, you need to get down and block shots, and it's turned into more of an offensive position as the league has gone more and more offensive intentionally,
right?
Which, I understand. And so I feel like Dallas has a core there that could do that. And they still have a top line that is generally pretty stinking good.
Right.
They really are.
Oh, yeah.
Amongst Ben, Sagan, and Radulov, they have some power there. And I know they underperformed early in the year. And their owner came out and said some things. And, hey, they ended up making the playoffs. They ended up winning a playoff round. They ended up losing in Game 7 to the eventual Stanley Cup champions.
No shame in that.
So they're a team that's right there. And I think once you add somebody like Joel Pavelski, who has this leadership experience, playoff experience, like power play tip-in type experience, because Pavelski is phenomenal at that. He reminds me of like a Thomas Holmstrom, where he's on the power play. He doesn't skate much, but he stands in front and deflects pucks in around your goalie that you didn't think were possibly going to be touched, and he found ways to do that. I think he makes their team better by being on it.
I would agree.
I don't necessarily say that he's better enough to the point of pushing them into the Colorado St. Louis caliber, but I think Dallas did get better player-wise in the offseason, and I think some of their younger guys got better through last year and through the playoff run to where they'll be better this year, of where they've gained experience. Much like Colorado, getting the experience of these young guys playing in important games and maturing through the playoff fire. I think Dallas had a little bit of that, and I think that will translate into this coming regular season.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I have the Preds at 95 to 100. It's the number 3, and then the Stars at 95 to 100 with the wild card. So I wouldn't.
I'm right there with you. I have Dallas around 100 and Nashville around 95. So we're the same but different.
Yeah, I think the Preds. They've been pretty consistent the last few years. I don't know. I mean, they got rid of Subban, but
right. I mean, you're still putting Pecorine in net half the time. You're putting UC Soros in net half the time.
Which, I mean, that's an incredible 1A, 2A.
I would say Saros is a starter on probably at least, I'd say a third of the teams in the NHL. If they had Saros, he would be the starter.
I'd be okay with Saros.
Absolutely, yeah. And their defensive core, even though it lost Subban, I almost think maybe that clears up the defense as far as we now have a defined leadership, as we no longer have, hey, we have Supan and this guy and this guy and this guy. Who's the number one? Who's the number two? It's like once you eliminate sometimes a leader, which Montreal did that. I mean, they traded him away and brought in Weber. And it's like you can change defensive pairings so long as you haven't lost defensive talent. And honestly, I didn't think Supan had that great of a year last year. I think maybe he's kind of turned the corner in age. Some of the things that made him good, he doesn't do as well anymore. And some of the things that he used to do easily, he has to work harder for or doesn't do at all. He looked a bit slow at times.
Yep.
And I can see where they got rid of him at a time where they got something for him. And that's great because it's a smart move. And you know you're going to have to sign Roman Yossi to a bigger long. You need some money for Roman Yossi because you don't want to lose him because he's truly a captain. And
Forsberg.
Yep. And so I can see where Nashville is making some smart moves, and they did bring in Matt Duchene, right? And you can insert country music joke here of whatever you want. And I would say that if they can get kind of like Colorado 2 scoring lines going, I'm still not sure if Duchene is the number one line or the number 2 line. That's up for debate. I guess the point totals at the end of the year will decide who was number 1 and who was number 2. Honestly, if you leave your top line the way it is and Duchene becomes your second line, Duchene as your second line center is a pretty decent second line because pretty much anywhere he's been, he's expected to be the top guy. To where if he's now going up against second pair defensemen, he could have a really, really good year. And so I would be interested in seeing how their 2 lines play out this year because they may be just about dead equal as far as point totals, and that's a really good balance to have, particularly in something as tough as the Central, where there are some pretty good defensive pairs that you got to go through. And if you can have 2 good scoring lines, you can make your life a little bit easier.
Oh, yeah. Makes it easier on everybody, that's for sure.
So,
did you have the Preds at number 4 then?
I absolutely had the Preds at number 4. Yep.
Who'd you have at number 5 then?
Number 5, I went with Chicago.
Ooh, all right. I went with the Jets.
The Jets, huh? I actually have Chicago and the Jets at the same points. I have them both at around 90 points.
Okay.
Both missing the playoffs. We probably should cover that in those top 4 teams. Those are all our playoff teams, correct?
Correct.
So Colorado, St. Louis, Dallas, and Nashville in whatever order. One's the third place in the division,
and the other's wild card.
playing St. Louis, and the other is the wild card.
Yep.
Playing probably Colorado.
Probably.
Actually, probably Vegas.
Or Vegas.
Okay.
So you have the Jets 85 to 90.
Okay.
I was selling on them last year, and I'm gonna keep selling on them. I think who's their goaltender?
Hellebuyck.
Yep. Yeah, he's good, but he struggled quite a bit last year.
Yep.
And Patrick Laine, the whole contract issue with him.
Yep. Kyle Connor,
contract issue with him.
If Bufflin, affectionately known as Byfuglian in my household, if he doesn't come back, they would have turned over 5 of their 6 defensemen in the offseason.
Which, that's just rough.
I don't see where you can bring in new defensemen, younger defensemen, and have Hellebuyck bail them out the way that I would expect somebody else to bail them out, right? And so, like a Ben Bishop. Like, if you have Ben Bishop back there, okay, you can throw a young defense in there. Maybe it'll work. I don't see where they are going to be better defensively this year. I see where they're going to be substantially worse.
Yes.
If you can't get both Laine and Connor re-signed, you are going to be worse, if not substantially worse, offensively. So I see where their goal differential is going to take a dramatic shift. And, yeah, I think they will easily be a team that you can say they're not going to make the playoffs because they had such a rough offseason, like historically rough offseason.
Yes, I agree. So, Blackhawks,
so I asked myself, last year the Blackhawks scored a lot of points. They scored 270 goals, which is right around that's as many as Winnipeg scored. That's more than Nashville. That's more than that's basically second in their division behind Winnipeg as far as scoring goals last year. They have added some pieces. You still have Taves and Kane. The Blackhawks right now kind of remind me of Pittsburgh Penguins to where you have your two main players and your main defenseman, right? So Duncan Keith is your Chris Letang, and Crosby and Malkin are your Taves and Kane, and to where you still have this core of veteran, experienced guys that can carry a team if they need to, and then you have younger players filling in around them. The problem in Chicago last year is, sure, they scored 270 goals. They also gave up 292 goals.
Yeah, I was about to ask, how many
Which
did
was
they give up then?
the most in their division.
Ooh.
And so how do you get better in that regard? Well, maybe you bring in a goaltender that won some awards last year out of New York. Pay him $5 million and say, hey, let's get better in goaltending this year, or at least force the guy in goal to get better. Because last year, Chicago didn't have a goaltender.
No.
Not a goaltender that they could say, this is our guy. I think this year, goaltending-wise, they'll be better.
Mm-hmm.
And so long as you can bring those goals given up down, which I think they will, and some of these younger guys like DeBrincat and whatnot coming in that will make their offense even better. Like, Kane, I think, was still almost a 100-point player last year, if not a 100-point player. And so you still have the talent on that team, and you still have guys that have won Stanley Cups on that team, to where you're like, you know what? I think they're going to try and make a run at it this year. I really do. I don't think they're in a, all right, we need to rebuild, much like the Pittsburgh Penguins, where it's like, all right, it's not time to tear it all down.
Mm-hmm.
We need to keep adding around the guys we have here and try and eke out another cup run or two from these existing players. That's where Chicago's at, and I think they've done a pretty decent job of making that happen. Now, I don't think they're going to get there. I don't think they're a playoff team. I think they're going to fall just short.
Mm.
But I think Chicago is the kind of team that could have a decent year.
Yeah, Patrick Kane had 110 points last year.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I mean, he's really one of the best players in the league.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Which is like, for him not to be in the playoffs is like, well, oh well. So much for that.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that leaves number 7.
That leaves number 7 in the odd-numbered Central Division,
Right.
which is obviously going to be Minnesota.
Uh-huh.
Had a very interesting offseason as well, between hiring a lizard and then firing the guy that hired the lizard. It was a very interesting offseason for Minnesota. And
yeah, I see them kind of being a dumpster fire still.
yeah,
Not necessarily a dumpster fire, but, you know.
I think they're a team that thinks they're where Pittsburgh and Chicago are, as far as, hey, we have some veterans guys that we're paying money to, let's try and make a push, but they don't have the talent overall to make that push. They're just they're not that good of a team.
No.
Like, for as much as they paid Suter and
No, they're
Parise
not.
back when they signed them both in the same years to those big contracts, they have not paid out in the way that you needed those guys to pay out, because now they have a lot of money locked up in players that are now towards the end of their contracts, the end of their prime.
Right.
And they, like, I know they were excited about the kid Greenway. He was like one of their prospects. He's now playing on their team. I watched him in like the Olympic tournament. Everybody was high on him. Not that impressive. I don't know why he hasn't come in and like made a huge difference. They don't have the kind of prospects and excitement that you can be like, okay, I can see where this team could do something. And in a tough Central Division, in a weak Western Conference, they're going to struggle. They're not going to struggle as bad as the Kings, but I expect them to be worse than Anaheim.
Yeah.
Like, if I had to choose right now and say who's higher or lower, I would say Anaheim over Minnesota.
Yep. I'll say if even if the Wild's in the Pacific, they're still not cracking the wild card top 3 spot.
Absolutely not.
All right. So to recap, Vegas, Calgary, San Jose, Vancouver, Colorado, St. Louis, Nashville, and Dallas
Agreed.
are going in.
Agreed.
Okay. Both had Avs as the President's Cup. All right. So anything else with the Western Conference you want to add?
Out of the Western Conference, I think it'll be a fun and entertaining year to watch the Western Conference, and yeah, I'm gonna watch.
I agree. I would agree. So with that, I think we are all set. So thank you, Alex. Again,
Thank
this is
you,
Justin
Justin.
here, and this is the hockey podcast that you're about to hear, what you just heard on our Western Conference recaps. So thank you all for listening, and talk at you later.